Some of those records still stand today. His 214 completions for 2,912 yards and 40 touchdown passes remain career records. His single game performance of 5 touchdown passes still topped the record book. His 15 touchdown passes in a season and single game of 251 remained records until only recently in the one yard pass. Yeah, 1 yard. Now I want to tell you too that he went on after high school and came over to, after a while, came over to IUP, where he played football, started for a couple of years in the 1970s, in fact 1976, 1977. Steve also coached and was an athletic director at Conneaut Valley High School, where they won their only district title, and that was back in 1987. The Indians, wouldn't you know it, the Indians finished at 10-0-1, and they won the AAA title. His 9-year coaching record, and you learn all kinds of things. I mean, I was 50-29 as a coach. We think of him as a player, but he came on as an AD and a coach. And we all remember when those of us who were around, yeah, Steve, Ken Decker hit the cheerleader. It was not a touchdown for State College. Pat Snyder, and he was on that team. That far, that's what it was. Ladies and gentlemen, for induction into the Indiana County Hall of Fame, Steve Neal.
I can't imagine being you, Pat, working at Indiana High School all these years, having to deal with that. Game we'll never forget. I'd like to start by honoring these people and all the other honorees that were acknowledged tonight. Very, very impressive group. I'm sure there's a lot of bright futures here. And I would imagine someday some of you are going to be recognized like we are, and I wish you all the best of luck. I want to thank the Hall of Fame committee. It's a tremendous honor to be here and join the people who have been inducted into the Indiana County Hall of Fame. Looking through the list, many people that I've known and many heroes of mine are in there, and it's just, right now it hasn't quite sunk in that I'm joining them, but that's something that's a real thrill. And I'm going to tell everybody something. I mean, no offense to any of these people sitting up here. I'm going to claim to be the luckiest person in the room tonight. And to try to prove that, just imagine getting inducted as a football player and having a major college football coach for a father. I had University of Virginia, United States Naval Academy, University of Pittsburgh as playgrounds. The practice field, the games were playgrounds to me, and just being around my father, his staff, the coaches, players, was just an amazing childhood that I wouldn't have changed for anything. In 8th grade, he took the job at Indiana, and we moved here, and we settled on South 3rd Street, and at that time, at least in my mind, that was the mecca of Indiana sports. Coach McGowan himself lived not too far from there, but across the street were the Stohoras. In our backyard lived the Moorheads. The McQuaids were up the street, Stu Kelly. We could go on and on and on. And you throw that many athletes into an area, and you're almost guaranteeing yourself some success at that time. And then when I move on to high school, I got to play for another Hall of Fame coach and Coach McGowan. And to put a uniform on to represent Indiana High School and play for Coach McGowan was one of the thrills of a lifetime. It was something that we all looked forward to. We couldn't wait for. It's amazing to me, and I think all of you that know Coach McGowan, that he's still coaching up today. But the things he taught us were not just football. Of course it was football, but there was many other lessons. Lessons about life, lessons about how to get along with people, and the respect for not just our teammates, but our school and also the community of Indiana. And there was a tremendous love that just was very obvious with Coach McGowan. The teammates that I had, you talk about being lucky. As a sophomore, I moved up to the high school, and that was the year statistically that I had the best year. And I was the little brother to the seniors on that team that year. We're talking about Denny Moorhead, Bill Martin, the local judge, Greg Christian, Ron Reed, the center. I could just go on and on and on. And those guys just looked out for me. The one game that still talked about, it's amazing to me that these records still stand, but the 5-touchdown game, 251 yards. I think the linemen after the game were more thrilled because my uniform was clean. And that's what they used to take pride in. I'd come out of a game, if I had any grass stains on me, if I got sacked or tackled or you had to scramble and run the ball, those guys weren't real happy. And talk about looking up to some people at that point in your life as a young, what was becoming a successful quarterback. It was an amazing period of time. As I moved on to my junior year, we had probably the best team that I had played on. This was the famous state college game that everybody has heard about at the end of the season. But that team was loaded with seniors. We had, Coach McGowan could tell you this better than I, but that was almost a high school team. That was a 2-platoon team, and there was no weaknesses on either side of the line of scrimmage. It was just an amazing thing to come out of the school, to walk up to that field following those little painted footsteps across the parking lot. We felt like our feet weren't even touching the ground. But when we got up to that football field, we just always felt like we would win, and that was something that Coach McGowan instilled in us. The biggest thrill for me throughout these years, again, talking about my sophomore and junior year, looking up to these guys, was getting into a huddle. And it was just a thrill to step into a huddle as a quarterback and look into the eyes of some of these guys that you had admired, and some of these guys that you realize are fantastic football players whose names in their own right were going to be remembered by, I'm sure, many of you in this room. And that's something that I'll absolutely never forget. But any quarterback that is going to achieve any success always has to have receivers that are tremendous receivers. And I was absolutely blessed with the core of receivers that I had through high school. John Kurtz, a tight end for 2 years, he was a year older than I, was just a big, strong kid that I remember many times, a little quick crossing pattern across the middle and dump him the ball and just see him break tackles, turn down a sideline, there you go. You got 70-some yards added to your passing statistics, and you threw a 6, 7, 8-yard pass. In my senior year, John was replaced by who at the time was one of my best friends, who's passed on not too many years later, but Courtney Macon, who was my backup quarterback from 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade. And my memory is that I think I helped convince Coach McGowan to move him to tight end. There's nobody in all the years and all the footballs that I've thrown that's ever caught more footballs that I threw than Courtney. And he turned into an all-state football player and was the Indiana Gazette Lineman of the Year that year. And obviously just a great athlete. I was blessed with him. But none compared to a classmate of mine, Mike McGinnis. When tonight I heard about Darius and his records and saw what an impressive-looking athlete he is and see that he's going to the University of Virginia, nobody would convince me that Indiana high schools ever had a better split end than Mike McGinnis. 6'2", 185, 90 pounds, just a man, just an absolute man. When he went up for a football, it was his, no question about it. And when he caught a football, you could almost see terror in defensive backs' eyes. Mike probably was the kind of guy that was scaring them not just with his size, but also probably yelling and screaming at him as he's running down the field. Unfortunately, last year, Mike passed away also. A very, very big loss and a deep surprise. But all of this background that you heard me talk about, football's been my life. You grew up with a coach, you basically, through osmosis, football just gets into your bloodstream. I wouldn't trade my childhood for anything. I've been absolutely blessed. And all of these things that occurred during my youth are things that in my professional life have led to a lot of success that I had. There wasn't a day on a practice field or the days that I coached that I didn't always have some great experiences to fall back on when I needed some advice or some ideas of things that I needed to do. So once again, I'd just like to thank the Hall of Fame committee. This is a true honor and one that I'll never forget, and wish everybody well. Thank you.
How about friends?